The last of our text chats, Russell Flannery from Forbes is here. There he is, coming up. And he's going to be interviewing Alvin Tse, the product manager of Flipboard Chna. So we get to hear about not only how Amex is trying to enter the Chinese market, but how Flipboard is as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca and I go back about 20 years, I would say, more than 20 years. Of course, back then, Rebecca was still just getting out of elementary school. But she was precocious and a big supporter of entrepreneurism even back then. So thank you. She's gone on to become one of our best columnists at Forbes.com. And very happy to be here to have a chance to see her while she's in Shanghai. Alvin, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you came to take the plunge as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So I'm the second Alvin in the room, and you know, it doesn't happen that often in China. But I'm from Hong Kong, and you know, grew up there, and you know, came from a kind of family background, was all in law. So I grew up thinking that I would become a lawyer, and things have changed. I got into Stanford, and you know, I was bombarded by a lot of different types of entrepreneurs and VCs, and you know, as a freshman, one day I got an email in my inbox, and you know, the title was you know, hiring a marketing intern for a company called Slide. And I had no idea what Slide is, but all I could recognize is the big, beautiful fonts that they used. And you know, I thought to myself, you know, why not? Let me, you know, try to apply. And I got in, and it turned out to be Max Levchin's company, you know, who was one of the co-founder of PayPal. And I, you know, grabbed breakfast with him, and you know, I really enjoyed the culture of a startup. I really liked the idea about, you know, creating products that you know, impacted many, many people. Slide was ultimately acquired by Google, but I think through that experience, it was that really caught my eyes on entrepreneurship, and I then, you know, went on to start my company when I was a sophomore. So that's sort of how I plunged into it.
So for people that aren't really users of Flipboard, what's Flipboard all about?
So I moved out to China about a year and a half ago, leading Flipboard's China operation. And in, you know, a one-liner about Flipboard is that we try to be a social magazine that aggregate beautiful content from great publishers around the world and give access to, you know, consumers, and we kind of deliver it in a beautiful magazine format to your iPad, Android, and iPhone. To date, Flipboard is used by over 75 million users around the world. You know, we were featured by Apple, and we work very closely with Samsung as well on the Android front. And if you guys haven't tried it, definitely give it a shot. You know, we work with a lot of Chinese media partners as well, so you can get your daily fix on your favorite news, business, fashion, etc.
Of course, the media industry is a tough industry for outsiders to get into in China. How did you go about coming into China and succeeding?
So we're still far from succeeding, but you know, how I got into China was also purely accidental. The advisor of Flipboard, called Robin Chan, actually you know, gave me a call one day, and he's like, well, you know, I need some help. Flipboard wants to launch a China product, but back then no one really spoke Mandarin. No one could really read Chinese characters. And as a new startup, as a news company, that spells trouble, right? So I was still an EIR at StartX, which was the Stanford incubator. And I felt like, well, you know, why not? I could do some, you know, I could just get some consulting work, and you know, let's try. So the moment I went to Flipboard, I first worked in their Palo Alto office. They said, well, you got 14 days to help us launch the China version. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, we'll see what we can do. So I pulled together the engineers, the designers. We look at the typography. We try to think, well, does this make sense for China content? And in 14 days, we get a local version together. And I flew out that Christmas, that was 2011's Christmas, to China, and we did a press launch. The initial reception was great. So, you know, the CEO of Flipboard said, you know, why don't you consider joining us? You know, we'll ship you out to Beijing. from sunny Palo Alto. You can build out the office there. So I took the jump, and I've been in Beijing for about a year and a half now.
How do you, of course, this is a sensitive industry in China. How do you manage the government relations side of the business?
We got a lot of different types of advisors. And actually, before we got into China officially, our US version of Flipboard was once blocked. And how we got it unblocked to this date is still a mystery. I think it was partly due to our partners. So we partnered with Sina Weibo and Renren, and I think they helped us quite a bit there. But as of now, I think we do it on a kind of need per basis. So if the government wants to contact us, we have an open line. You could reach me anytime. But otherwise, we don't really have a government relations department, right? Our Beijing team is very, very small. We run a super lean operation. It's just 3 people. That's sort of the resource we have right now.
What are some of the differences in the kind of content that's popular with the users that you have in China compared with the States?
So in the States, we started out as being very user experience driven. So a lot of our users love the kind of lifestyle content, love the fashion, the design. But in China, actually, more people like, entertainment types of content. They like kind of the news type of content. So I would say the US consumers to date are more kind of inspirational types of content, whereas the Chinese audiences that we have look for the more practical type of content. So that's sort of the biggest distinguishment we see.
How big is the business in China right now?
So we haven't broken down our numbers, by country, but China is the 2nd largest market for Flipboard. So it's growing pretty fast and pretty steadily as well.
Do you have any investment partners in China, or do you see yourself taking on any down the road?
So in this startup world, never say never. But up to date, all our investors are based in the States. We're open-minded. But at the moment, I think we're just focused on growing the user base and making the product a better product in China.
Where do you see yourself 3 years from now in China?
So 3 years from now, I hope I'm still in China. The pollution could get a bit tough every now and then. But if I'm still in China, I think one thing that I really enjoyed is to kind of bridge the gap between the Valley and China. I try to help my fellow startup friends. If they want to enter the China market, I try to give them some of the experience that I've gone through. 3 years from now, who knows? I might go ahead and start another company. I hope that Flipboard will do very, very well in 3 years, we'll see. But I always try to kind of just, be entrepreneurial in no matter what I do, and try to create value for others.
What are some of those other companies that you might be starting?
Not sure if I'm at the liberty to talk about it right now at this moment, but before Flipboard, I actually started a mobile photo sharing company way before Instagram, and that was back in 2009. I still remember we pitching to VCs in the Valley, telling them, we felt like the phones, the camera in the phones are gonna change how people take photos. And the VCs were like, what? You guys are crazy. That's not gonna happen. And iPhone was, 3G. It wasn't even 3GS. So, the phone was in 1 million pixel. But we built two photo apps, and they were in the top spots in the iPhone App Store. And before we actually sold the company, Kevin Systrom from Instagram emailed and said, maybe we should meet. But let me just go through our press release, press launch, and then we can talk. And obviously they did the press thing, and they kind of just exploded, and they never really needed anyone's help after that. So unfortunately, we didn't sell to them. But it was still a very good learning experience on my side. So,
any questions for Alvin?
We're bringing a mic to you. Just 1 second.
One question. Before I think you guys came here, there were already a couple of copycats. And then one of the biggest ones started with a Z. I think you guys know who they are. And how do you compete with them? with these copycats?
Great question. So I think the diplomatic answer would be, we try to work very hard on our products. We try to have a great user experience, and we'll focus on our own thing, right? But I think after being in China for a year and a half, right? I think whenever a U.S. company talks to me and say, I'm thinking about coming to China, what's the general advice you could give me? My belief is that in each industry, you actually have to do your own analysis as to whether your product has a chance of succeeding in the local China market. The way I see it is the clones and the copycats of Flipboard in China, they do a very, very good job in curating local content, right? They do a great job in kind of attracting the low-end mass market. So just for an example, if you use one of these clones, once you enter the app, the first thing that you might see is beautiful pictures of girls, or in swimming suits, that type of content, right? And to their credit, I mean, those work, right? But for us, I think we soon realized that we need to find our own niche in China. We realized that we need to find our own positioning in China, and we want to be kind of serving the mid to high-end market, giving them the latest, maybe international news, as well as curating a lot of the kind of content I talked about, inspirational content, design, lifestyle, and we work with a lot of startups in those industries to bring them those information. So I would try to kind of differentiate ourselves from that regard and compete with the local players.
I think there was one last question here.
Thank you.
Could you just identify yourself too, please?
Once you're working towards China inbound, there's a big market opening up in terms of China outbound now. Given the fact that you know the foreign business model very well, what would be your advice in terms of writing a content that will write into the Chinese brand DNA and export it in a most effective and productive way?
So if I understand the question correctly, the question was, how do you actually do the flip side, which is, bringing Chinese brands, to outside? And interestingly, you could see that there are a lot of, fast-growing Chinese brands trying to go global, right? The recent example being Xiaomi, right, which, who has hired a great VP from Google. And I think it comes back to the fundamental, which is, if you want to go into a new market, you got to be like a local in that new market, right? So it's very, very tough if you trying to do things remotely, if you try to kind of think things in your own terms, right? So once I got into Beijing, I was like, no more Silicon Valley style, right? You gotta, kind of do the China thing, right? So I think it's the same for any, Chinese companies trying to go abroad. I sometimes recommend people to, if you try to set up a US team, try to find someone who really understands US culture, right? Same thing, if if US companies want to come to China, I try to tell them, find a local China GM, right? People like myself, who had, education in the States, I think it's not gonna work as well, to be very honest, not to work as well as a local guy. But because there's also the issue of trust. So at the very early stages, I think it makes sense to have someone who was trained in HQ and then sent over to the new market to be the first guy. And then hopefully sooner or later you recruit a local team very quickly and then try to execute.
Yeah, that definitely has been the pattern. Well, thank you very much, Alvin and Russell. Let's give them a round of applause.